Hey, it's Chris. Let's do this. Post UK Games Expo. What are we talking about today? Well, some of the news that came out from there, some of the news that's just come out over the last 2 weeks. What do you need to know? What's going on? Where are things at now on the tabletop scene? Losing my voice. Wouldn't be a summer weekend without it. Let's do this. Look, in case you missed it, the first big news is clearly going to be Gloomhaven, the second edition. I mean, we can't not talk about Gloomhaven, the second edition. The big question that is on people's minds and that was answered relatively quickly via Cephalophere Games was that it's going to have tiles. Now, because it's going to be a direct tie-in for people wanting to play the RPG, it's going to be cross-compatible in that sense. So they did not go with the spiral-bound book like they did with Jaws of the Lion, because that would have been too good. That would have been too nice. They're upgrading things, they're tweaking things, removing errata, streamlining things, giving you new scenarios, giving you new characters, even a little bit of everything. It even has its own board game freaking geek entry that's separate from the original. So, I mean, cool? Question mark, he says, with some doubts. I mean, it's great that they're going to improve it, but I don't really know if it's necessary. I mean, I say that as a big fan. I just don't know if it's absolutely necessary. Now, it's been a couple years since it came out, so I don't fault them for wanting to improve on one of the best overall products out there on the market in the first place. But do I think it needed a whole new edition? That's where I diverge in some of those issues. But because, like I said, I think there's going to be a lot more heavy tie-in with the RPG and some of the stuff that's going to come subsequently new from the RPG side of things. I think that's where things are really going to kind of show their true value and weight. So if you got the first one, this isn't going to appeal to you whatsoever. It's a great entry point. It's going to be a better entry point than the first one, a better entry point potentially maybe than Frosthaven, but is it going to beat Jaws of the Lion? No, it's not. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Also, how much is the price point going to change? Are we actually going to see a reduced price with this compared to the first edition? Are we going to see a bump up in the price? Again, no idea. I don't know if there were actually price details released at that time, but we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I have no freaking clue. The other news that we just have to talk about that I probably would have led with this otherwise had Gloomhaven 2nd Edition not been announced is we are getting Ticket to Ride freaking Legacy, right? How do you feel about that one? I mean, I love the idea of it, but do you want to pay $120 for a Ticket to Ride game? Even if you can play it, 12 times and have an everlasting, unique Ticket to Ride board, right? Like, that's the marketing scheme that they're going with in that side of things. But I guess I have trouble with it in the sense that these pieces better be covered in gold glitter or something to actually justify what this is going for at $120. Is it going to be a game mat? Like, what is costing this much? I'm looking at My City, a tile version of that. Pandemic Legacy, right? WTF. Seriously. But I can't imagine it's doing anything but retail, which is scary. This is forking price creep if I've ever seen it, right? Because as I just mentioned with Gloomhaven, I can't imagine if you're going to redo stuff, you're going to reduce the price. No offense. I can't imagine that this is going to be significantly cheaper than whatever the MSRP at $120 is going to be, right? We saw Clank Legacy, which is $100. We just saw Clank Legacy 2 on crowdfunding, which was, more than that when you include the shipping. Holy freaking forking price creep, Batman. We're starting to price people out of the hobby with these things. Like, it's a great concept, but it's not practical. People are losing touch with that aspect of things with some of this stuff. Like, there's plenty, and I know this argument's going to be made in the comment section. There's plenty of games that are accessible, Chris. There are plenty of small box games you can get, right? There are plenty of other Ticket to Ride games you can get. Well, Pandemic, Legacy versus generic versus flavor of the year, right? You don't see Legacy being 2 or 3 times the amount of one of the flavors of the year, right? So what is going on with this? I'm not going to argue price per play with you because we can get into semantics of big games where the price per play is a lot worse, Kingdom Death, Aeon Trespass Odyssey, whatever. You can go the other end of your fillers and your love letters and your talks and hives where it's, the best thing ever created except for maybe print and plays. But I just look at this and I go, people were complaining about this on crowdfunding all the time. This is one of the most common complaints on crowdfunding, where it's, oh my gosh, another triple digit pledge. Oh my gosh, another all in at $200, $300, $400. Retail is slowly creeping up. The last Clank game, $60. This one, $120. We're seeing it on the video game side of things, $70 for a new game. Games going on sale like 3 years later for Nintendo, that's still $60. Like, at some point, you know, it's going to become an issue. And I don't like that at all, one bit. It's got an amazing pedigree. It's got all the biggest name designers that you could ever imagine with legacy games and non-legacy games, and Ticket to Ride and Moon and DeVoe and everything else along the signs. But I just have to pump the brakes a little bit on this and say, where was the overhead in terms of just saying this is not only an amazing thing, but also it's a practical thing? The next big thing that just got announced over the UK Games Expo, Paper Fort Games has picked up the IP for Terraria, another video game import, another video game coming to the tabletop. Are you excited by this one? Is this one better for you than, say, your Minecrafts, your Animal Crossings, whatever else it may be in that realm of things? Is this actually going to entice you as a video game coming to the tabletop? Again, like, how do you do a game like this on the tabletop? Dofromantic is just kind of on the tabletop as well now too, with the recently announced Spiel nomination. But I've heard mixed feelings on that one as well, where it's, you know, it's too close to the video game of a Zen-like experience, and where's the actual game, right? And I have no idea what to expect with this one. I think it's a big win for them. But again, expectations? No working clue. So that seems to be the prevailing trend, I guess, with this video as a whole. Then we just have a whole lot of other recent announcements. Boon Lake, the Feister game, is getting an expansion sometime later this year. Then we have also Mythic Mischief from IV Games is also going back to crowdfunding and bringing an expansion or plus more sometime like in around September. Disney's Sorcerer's Arena is slowly leaking out information on their fourth expansion already somehow. They're trying to catch up with Unmatched, OP Games. Renature is getting an expansion called Renature Valley. Now, this one is actually the most intriguing of these because this is a very deadly cutthroat tile-laying domino-like game if you've never played it. Absolutely fantastic, probably in my top 30 games or so of all time, but it's hard to play because it's so cutthroat and you need to be so mean when you're building these forest trees, sort of animal areas, and you're growing mushrooms in the new expansion. So don't be fooled. Picture, theme, take that. Yeah, those two things are dichotomously different there. But that's the most intriguing one to me. I need to get Sorcerer's Arena played more just because I like it. I need to get Unmatched because they've got a couple of those upcoming Marvel ones coming out for Unmatched. So we'll kind of see where that goes. One of these days I'll eventually get in it and see how it compares and go head to head. And then we also just had a recently teased, announced, whatever you want to say, from Cardboard Alchemy. If you remember them from your previous big hit of Flamecraft. Well, later this year, they're going to have another standalone, some sort of, no clue what it's going to be, called Critter Kitchen. There's a little teaser from Cardboard Alchemy's Instagram, but there's no details. There's not even an entry in Board Game Geek yet at this point, so we don't know any of the actual mechanistic approaches or what you're going to be doing. But I mean, Flamecraft was Flamecraft, right? Dragons Baking, Critter Kitchen. So along the same lines, I have to imagine so. So Peter Hayward is going to tell us more whenever they choose to reveal more information, but sometime that's going to be coming, I would assume, as well to crowdfunding later this year in addition. Then Portal just teased another game over at the UK Games Expo called Imperial Miners. You may be familiar with their other one, Imperial Settlers. And this one's in the line of that, only you're underground grabbing resources, 1 to 5 players, and you're going all hand management, simultaneous action selection. You're getting one of 6 strategic underground mining boards that are going to allow you to create your own mines by playing cards into your own personal tableau. Cards, modular progress boards, simultaneous gameplay. I'm intrigued. This one wasn't on my radar at all. Didn't know anything about it prior to doing this video, and now I'm seriously interested in it. I would imagine, just like Imperial Settlers, this is going to be a retail release. I would imagine sometime later this year. If I had to guess, I'd guess around Essen, but we'll see. Hopefully Portal will have some more details here in the near future as well. Speaking of sequels, expansions, and things along those lines, you may not know their publishing name, Impatience, but you probably recognize Onitama, the solo player style abstract game. And there's another in that line coming from their designer called Siberian, which is going to be released later this year, sometime around the Essen era. Cogs, sabotaging machines, and you only have minutes before things explode. Now, I mentioned solo because that's what these games are most known for, but they're 1 to 2 players, using your robot cards to either trigger the machine, use powerful effects, or repair it before all of the failsafes collapse at the end of the game. Not a huge fan of the series. I just haven't played them a whole lot, but I know people that really love them and they like all of them. Is this one going to be better or worse than the other ones? I mean, the pedigree's there in the first place. So we'll see later this year, again, late fall, what they've got in store for us. Speaking of things from similar designers, if you remember Hedera, from the designer of Hedera, we now have another game coming out called Djinn. And this is going to be across a map of 13 different locations where you're going to be trying to collect up to 6 of these Djinn in order to prevent them from stealing all of the magic that's in the world. Making sure you resource manage appropriately, because you can only reach 1 out of 2 or 3 different locations that are on the board in range of where you need to go, getting bottles, corks, magical powers, buying items, hiring mages to help you along your way. And again, all of this stuff later this year. I mean, it's an intriguing concept, a theme. It sort of reminds me with the board setup style description of Tabriz, which I talked about earlier in the year, which I was a big fan of. And so we'll kind of see where this one goes as well. This is from Hale Games. Now, speaking of reprints that are going to be coming out soon, we have 2 that are coming out in the near future. If you didn't hear my voice crack right there, that's how well I'm doing. String Railway, a literal game of using strings to bring trains, is going to be republished and refurbished apparently later this year. And then we're also seeing Crossbows and Catapults coming sometime later this month, potentially either on one of the Tuesdays of the 14th or the 21st from Restoration Games, hot off the heels of Thunder Road Vendetta, which is getting all the acclaim of being one of the coolest racing smash 'em up style games in a Mad Max-esque vibe that people were looking for in the first place. So there are no details, but they've definitely upgraded. You're not using rubber bands anymore. So imagine your price point is going to be a pretty penny on that one. Probably at the other end of the string, though, for String Railway, if you're actually just using string still with slightly better accoutrements. So we'll kind of see where that goes. Speaking of crowdfunding, though, Cryptozoic just recently announced that they are coming back to crowdfunding with Justice League Dark, a DC deck building game. Now, a combinatorial sort of crowdfunding campaign, I think, just like their previous one that they did and just delivered with the big box and then the 2-player one and then the big expansion that they kind of divvied up the stretch goals through and all that stuff, right? So we're seeing Justice League Dark. And if you're not familiar with Justice League Dark, it's sort of like the B team, if you will. I know I'm going to get some flack for that in the comment section. You know, there's an asterisk there, right? The team that does the dirty work, right? We'll say it's more like X-Men's X-Force, if you will, a little bit in that sense, where you've got more of your magic users. You've got like your Constantines and those sort of people who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. That's really what it's referring to. And it's coming to crowdfunding, and it did really well the first time around. And so I can't imagine that Cryptozoic is going to stray too far away from that formula with the exclusives and the stretch goals. They did offer non-boxed expansions from the retail expansions of yesteryear, of the past like years, at a cheaper price, even shipped, which was really impressive if you're one of those people that doesn't care about boxing them up or having the original boxes in the first place. So we'll see what sort of deals and bundles they put out this time. Kind of not a fan of the game as a whole. Great intro game. Doesn't really necessarily hold me over yet, but I mean, if a copy ended up in my collection, it'd be something I'd love to try with the kids too. So I'm not going to, dismiss it, because especially the newer stuff they're putting out is definitely more interesting than stuff, even say 3 or 4 years ago. Sticking with the crowdfunding, Mantic is coming back as well in the near future. They are coming back with Worms. Worms, the video game Worms, right? With the little bazookas and the guns, and you shoot stuff across and it goes down and it blows up the other person, and you have so much life and you have so many worms on each team, and classic, I grew up with it game. They're coming back with it. I'm assuming some sort of miniature-esque version to crowdfunding. So We'll see. I have no idea with that. That'd be an intriguing concept. I like the idea of it. How do you do something like that? Show me. Show me, Mantic. Show me. I'm all for it. So a little bit of nostalgia with that one as well. Now we're going to go with a slightly different variation here at the end. Clans of Midgard. So your Midgard, your Grey Fox games, but in a different tableau style Viking game from them. This one is actually going to be your draft, write, and fight style of games. Yeah, it's a roll and write with Midgard and Vikings, folks. 3 rounds of conquering, fighting, sailing across the seas, getting your runes, and getting your warriors. No details. I'm assuming, again, this is probably going to be a crowdfunding, knowing Grey Fox, but don't have a whole lot of details otherwise. Timing. So take that for what you will. Haven't seen much from Grey Fox, except I just got the last email that the Ragnarok's crowdfunding campaign finally finished up all of its delivering. So if they're caught up with that, I could see them coming out with this one in the near future as well. That's it. That's what's going on. News, notes, noteworthy stuff, everything in between. Just a lot of follow-ups, a lot of expansions, a lot of sequel-esque games this week. So what tickles your fancy? What caught your eye at UKGE, if you will? Post Gamma, post this, post Origin soon. It's convention season. Social media lets you know how much you're missing out and how much all of the people you have vague relationships with are having fun, right? That is what it's for nowadays, because that's all that pops up in my Twitter, Facebook, and Board Game Geek feeds, right? So be it, you know? Get a family. I'm not going to a convention, right? You know what? I've said this previously, it's just not going to happen with a family, right? Like conventions are, either you're in the industry or you're like single or without kids, essentially, for the most part, unless your like whole family is like, whoa. And that's cool if they are. I'm a little jealous, but mine's not. So, work, kids, here. And I'll tell you about everything else in between, Speaking of that, I'm not even big enough that the convention that's in my own city knows who I am yet on the hobby scene, right? So, I'm going to go there and just be incognito one of these years. Just be like totally, I think it, honestly, like that would freak me out. Like I would wear like a heavy set, like stocking cap and just like, I'd be weirded out if somebody like recognized me, right? Like totally be humbling and totally be like, oh crap, what did I say that pissed them off? Or how badly can I lose a game to people who know me through the internet, right? That'd be what it is, right? Like I would just get decimated in every game I played. And, I lose all the time here. What's losing elsewhere, right? Play to win? Ha, sucker. Just play to play and have fun. That's all I got. I'm rambling at the end here. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Thanks for watching. My voice is going to be horrible after this weekend. Whew. Good thing I'm not working 10 days straight. Oh, wait, I am. Peace out.